name is Ellen Hawley. I live in Elkhorn. I am a community activist, organizer, educator, 30-year teacher, and kind of fell into getting very upset about this unexpectedly. I was invited to a tailgate presentation in Madison several weeks ago, and brought 3 people from this area, and was appalled and thought, well, look, can't possibly be this bad. You know, we all have our slant, we all have our MO, and so I went home and I Googled it and did some research, and it's much worse, actually. So we decided we needed to jump into action here. This is not a presentation that is sponsored by any political party or any particular group. It is a grassroots group, the Wisconsin Grassroots Pipeline Awareness Group. We have people from Sierra Club, we have people from Madison 350, Forward Whitewater, Walworth County Democrats, all sorts of folks. So I thank you for coming. I hope you find it informative. We're not going to sit for 2 hours and listen to speeches because that's a long time to sit, but we will have our speakers speak succinctly. There will be plenty of time for discussion, questions, and answers. So at this time, I would like to invite any elected officials, any person here who's currently been elected to office to please stand up. I know 2, at least, people here. We have 2 members of the Walworth County Board here, Supervisor Charlene Staples and Supervisor Dan Kilkenny, also a candidate for the 11th Senate District. So thank you so much for coming. I believe we also have a couple candidates in the room. I already reintroduced Senator Kilkenny, oh, excuse me, not yet, Mr. Kilkenny. And we also have Jeremy Ryan.
Running for the 1st Congressional District in a primary against Paul Ryan.
Yeah. So Ryan versus Ryan. Isn't that something? So that's great. And we have people, a lot of people here, not from Walworth County. We have someone who came from Kansas, you know, for this. We have some people from, Linda, where are you from? Clark County, okay? People from just all over the state, some folks from Madison, and I'm very touched by this because this is how we get grassroots going, and please know that Walworth County is a good place to be a grassroots activist. And this,
I'm actually a grassroots activist, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor.
Wonderful! Are you Mary Jo?
I'm married to Walter.
Very nice, thank you, nice to meet you, thank you for coming. Excellent. Very nice. We have not yet met, now we have, great. I would like to at this time introduce Supervisor Charlene Staples, who represents the 5th District for Walworth County. She's going to tell you a little bit about a resolution that recently passed in committee in Walworth County that we're very excited about, and we'll let her tell you a little bit about that, and then we'll start with a quick film. So, Charlene Staples.
Okay, I'm not used to using a microphone, but when I found out about this pipeline and started investigating as Ellen did, matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that Ellen was the one that put the bee in my ear. I decided it was my responsibility to try to inform Walworth County and other elected officials, since when I talked to some of them, they had no idea what I was talking about when I said the pipeline in tar sands and Enbridge, and none of these words seem to light a light bulb. They didn't know. And I don't know a whole lot, even after investigating a little on Sierra website, and of course Enbridge really, their website really tells you absolutely nothing. But I do know that information is important. Information hurts no one, and we all need to know more about things, especially when they may hurt us, they may cause us harm, and do damage to our beloved county and our beloved state. So I introduced a resolution that passed in our Land Conservation Committee this week, and it will go to the full board of Walworth County in September. Just to let you know, I have received a phone call from Enbridge, and I've tried to call them back without a return phone call. They're telling me that it does not go through Walworth County. I don't know if that's true. I believe it goes through Walworth County. But really, to tell you the God's honest truth, I don't care whether it goes through Walworth County, because it sounds very dangerous, and I do know they have not told the entire truth. So I believe that it's important to find out as much as we can. And they could have showed up to this meeting, because I'll guarantee you they know about it. I got the phone call. I've also informed every county board member about this meeting tonight. I let some of the town boards in my district, most of them also knew about this informational meeting, and I was hoping to see some of them here, because I believe it's as I said, so important. And with that, I'll hand off.
Okay, I'd like to invite Bruce Noble to come and start our speakers. And again, we have people that have come from all over the state and actually all over the Midwest, so we are very happy to invite these very knowledgeable and energetic people. So, Bruce?
Thank you very much, Ellen. I really appreciate the work you did to organize this meeting tonight, and Lynn Shoemaker and everyone else who took part in the organization. I really appreciate everyone coming, especially the current office holders and the future office holders. We'll be seeing you in the voting booth. I'm Bruce Noble. I'm here representing the Grassroots Pipeline Awareness Group. The film said that I was the director. I had nothing to do with the film. That's not that I'm not proud of it. I smiled for 3 days afterwards, except this guy was the one who did it, and he was this This is Don Wyeth from up in Owen, Clark County, Wisconsin. I would like a little orientation here, just to give you a broad focus. Now, I don't have a nice a nice setup here like Don has, but I kind of work out of the back of my garage. This is the pipeline in toto that runs from Alberta through North Dakota, Minnesota. This is Wisconsin. This is the Flanagan South branch that goes down to Cushing, Oklahoma, and then the Seaway pipeline branch that goes to Freeport, Texas. We're pretty sure there's good evidence to say that this tar sands will be able to replace Keystone XL if that doesn't go through, and we're very hopeful that it's not going to go through. Don's shaking his head.
It's all the above, actually.
Oh, all of the above, okay. Anyway, that gives you kind of a global sort of a picture of, that's fine, Ellen, thank you, of the whole pipeline. You can't see this either, but there's a picture of it in the back, and I have a few extra copies. This is the pipeline. Maybe you can just see that this is the pipeline coming out of Jefferson County into Rock County. And they call it the Delavan. I grew up in Michigan, sorry. Pumping station is in Rock County. It's not in Walworth County. It's so that, and it goes right through the Lima marsh, pristine marsh area there, and it's something to preserve and keep an eye open for. But it does split into two. There is a Walworth County 61 branch. This one goes to Flanagan, Illinois, the one through Rock County. The Walworth County branch goes to refineries in Chicago. Now, what they're going to do with that, I don't know. But it has tar sands in it. So it needs to be refined if it's going to be petroleum. But we think that the tar sands, as we've seen in the map, is going to potentially carry tar sands oil to foreign countries. All right. Now, since this film was made, there was a report of the Kalamazoo River spill in Michigan by the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. And here are the contents of the spill. 1,2,3 trimethylbenzene. 1,2,4 trimethylbenzene. 1,3,5 trimethylbenzene. Benzene. Cyclohexane. Ethylbenzene. You get the picture. And inorganic metals, beryllium, iron, mercury, nickel, titanium, vanadium. And as Don pointed out in the movie, that both hexane and benzene are known as carcinogenic, it has those properties. Got to make sure I watch myself here. I have I don't use up my 10 minutes. I spoke to, several of us spoke to a Dane County supervisor last week when we were filming in Dane County. And he said that even though he voted for the resolution in Dane County that's sent to the DNR asking for an expanded environmental assessment, he said nobody cared in 2006. He didn't get one phone call, he said, and they don't care anymore. Now, is that true? Well, actually, movements don't work unless people feel at risk. Thomas Paine, during the American Revolution, convinced the people that fighting back against the English crown was a good idea in his book, Common Sense. That is what we want to do, is to take this story that is so hidden from people out to the people who live along the pipeline, and they speak common sense. They live on common sense. And that's what we want to promote in our work. Another thing, we think that this Goliath called Enbridge is not going to be affected by one David or one Sally. It's going to be affected by many, many people and many organizations. Sierra, 350.org, and a whole litany of other ones. We just want to cooperate in that effort, and we think we are doing it in maybe a little different way because we want to go out, boots on the ground, out to speak with the people. But there's room for everybody. So people are addicted to petroleum. They either don't know the risks or they don't want to know the risks. We don't believe that what happened at the Capitol in 2011 can work in an agrarian setting. I was in that movement. I was arrested at the Capitol singing with a sing-along. So I am not saying that these things should not be done somewhere in the right places, but I don't think, for instance, Walworth County is a place we want to go around with pickets and horns yelling out slogans and that kind of thing. Again, I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying that there's a place for everything. Okay, we want to, we don't think this is a Facebook movement either. Facebook is great. I'm on it every day. I live with it, and maybe you'll die with it, I don't know. So I don't want to knock it, but I don't think that we can take this effort to the people on Facebook. Many of them don't know about Facebook. They're not on the internet. So we want to hit the grassroots. Now, very quickly, 2 people from our group, I want them to speak. First, John Andresi from Adams in Wood County. He lives in Adams County, but he's active in Wood County. Just say just a word about what you're doing up there, John, if you would, please.
Knowledge is power, and what we're doing, one of the things that we've done is to go before county boards to explain and to bring forward our problems with what's going on with Enbridge. When Enbridge put this thing into motion back in 2006, they already had 2 pipelines in the ground. They put 2 more in on this permit, and initially they moved the amount of oil that has been alluded to already. And the permits, however, were given for the 1.2 million barrels per day that they're ramping up to here in the future. Now, we've had some serious spills since the lines went in. One of them is in Adams County, where I live, about 30 miles from my home. And the problem with all of this is that there were and continue to be mechanical difficulties with the line. Some of the line was manufactured down in a plant in Louisiana, and the manufacturing processes were not attended to properly, and there are defects. And these pieces haven't all been identified as far as where they're located in this 321 miles. One of those points was the spot down in Grand Marsh in Adams County. So that gives us reason to believe that there's more that is capable of happening. As this pressure is ramped up, they're getting this 1.2 million barrels rather, by actually increasing the pressure on the line. They're not putting a new line in the ground. If they were, we'd have a place to move. The permitting has already been let. They have us right here, if you'll excuse my crudity, but they do because of the fact that the permit is already passed and done. What we're asking these county boards to do is to tell the state that the citizenry, all of us, have taken notice of what's going on and that we want to revisit this thing. That's everything to do with what we're all about. It's not a matter that we're going to regress and that we're going to have pipe pulled out of the ground. I can't stand here and tell you that. That ain't going to happen. I wish it would, but that's where we're at. Now, I'm going to be using up my time, and I've made my point. That knowledge is power. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Linda Wyeth, a member of our group and a reporter for the Owen with the Community News. No. Well, she's a reporter. She's our ace reporter. She's going to talk about Clark County.
I was one of the first people to notice this issue and write about it in our local weekly paper. And I put it out on my website, which is on with the Community News, but the newspaper is the Sentinel and Rural News. There are a limited number of copies of both articles that I've written back there. First one is what's in a pipeline. The second one is that this pipeline will be bigger than Keystone XL. All right, we had a spill January 1st, 2007 in the township of Green Grove near Owen, just a couple of miles from where we live. The video had it wrong. The actual size of the spill was 1,500 barrels. It's different places, you'll see different numbers, but 1,500 barrels in the official report, and 63,000 gallons. the report came out, it was January 1st, 2007. The report came out in June 2012 and said it was defective welds in the pipes manufactured in Stupp Manufacturing down in New Orleans. Just a little more than a month later, they had the spill in Adams County, which was also attributed to bad welds in pipes manufactured in December of 2012 by Stupp Manufacturing Company. Same company, same welds. One of the issues that I've run into is taxes. Enbridge claims they pay 20 or 21 million in property taxes to the state. In actual fact, they pay nothing in property taxes in the townships where they exist. Pumping station in Owen, exempt. I inquired of the Department of Revenue what this is called, this tax is called, and they had a long, complicated name that didn't mean anything. And I asked how much they do pay. And I was told by the Department of Revenue that that information is confidential, and that, in fact, their email to me is confidential. But I've since learned that whatever they do in the normal course of work is not confidential. So at some point tomorrow or the next day, I am going to post the letter so people can see what it says and figure out, if they can figure out, how that number is arrived at. Zoning, huge, huge issue. You have to understand that everywhere you live, in every township, in every county, zoning is a little bit different. And I learned last night at a zoning variance hearing for the huge new pumping station they're going to build in near Owen, that in fact the town board doesn't know about their own zoning. Clark County has no zoning. Town of Green Grove has some zoning. But it's also interesting that the person who is the township zoning administrator is probably related, and she wasn't at the meeting, so I couldn't ask her last night, probably related to the people who sold the land to Enbridge for the new pumping station. $25 million building, no taxes will be owed on the land or the building. What else? Oh.
Let me just interrupt.
Sure.
She's got so much information that she could talk for 4 hours.
Yep. No.
There'll be plenty of time for people to ask you questions and you to talk some more.
I'll finish one more statement. John says, knowledge is power. I say, water is life, and the overarching issue is what was done to weaken our laws about water regulation and what can happen to that, and that's the critical issue. Thanks.
Linda, can you start over because we're clapping over here?
Pardon?
Can you repeat water is life and then what you said after that?
Right. Just
repeat it?
it is. It's life. I mean,
After that.
What about the laws?
Oh, the laws. Along with the weakening of the mining laws, the Republicans in the state legislature also weakened the laws that govern water regulation and wetlands and that kind of thing. So that's also major critical things. I'll mention 3 names: Jackie Guthrie, Jennifer Smith, Becky Haas. Those are 3 Enbridge PR people whose names you may encounter. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right. We want plenty of time for other people and discussion. Let me just end by floating an idea that's just kind of budding. And that is, I'd like to walk the pipeline from Illinois to Minnesota. Now, I will take the first 5 miles from the Illinois line if people will jump in and be a part of the team to walk through Walworth County. If you can take a mile, you can take 3 feet, but I can't do it. I'm 80 years old, and I'm lucky to be up here. So anyway, I just floating that idea. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
And I don't have last names, I'm sorry, but our next speaker will be Harry from 350 Madison, from Kansas.
Glad to be here tonight. And yes, I indeed am from Kansas. I moved to Madison in 2011. The story kind of starts, I bought a small farm in Kansas in 1978, and 40-acre farm, and owned it for 29 years, and then was notified in 2007 that my farm was in the easement of the Keystone Cushing extension, which was the pipeline that would eventually be designated as the Keystone XL, the portion that would go from Cushing, Oklahoma down to the Gulf. That's the subject of a lot of controversy. And so in notification that I was in the easement, I went into the whole rigmarole of, being notified, getting offers to buy the linear feet in my, the easement, pay me. And luck would have it that several of our neighbors got together and we were able to convince them to at least reroute the pipeline to the west of us, and we were outside of the easement, but I ended up in 2010 when it was constructed, I was about 50 yards from the pipeline structure, and then it crossed a creek that I owned both sides of on my farm. So I was impacted even though I wasn't in the ownership, the selling of the easement. Well, what I wanted to impart tonight is that I got to know a lot about pipelines real quick. And the company, which is a big competitor of Enbridge, is TransCanada, that owns the Keystone pipelines. And the interaction that started happening, I was seeking who permits these, who oversees them, who's in control here. And you mainly have in pipelines, because of the nature of the piping of hydrocarbons, they get a pass on a lot of things inside of the states. The main regulatory body is one called PHMSA, and it's part of the U.S. Department of Transportation Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, PHMSA. And this is once you get into the sort of the way this works as a regulatory body, it has a lot of revolving doors. And while you want people that are skilled in the petroleum industry, you don't want company operatives. And that seems to be, by my observation and the people I met. Now, Wisconsin happens to be in the same region as Kansas, and this comes out of a main office in Kansas City. So if you were to research, you'd find a very, very understaffed. And if you were to look into how many people were on site during the process of when the pipeline, the 42-inch pipeline, that is line 61, you would find that probably they got by maybe 10%, 20% of the welds were actually observed by PHMSA federal regulators. That most of it is done, the company and of course Enbridge and TransCanada do not assemble these. These are done by contractors that they hire. In the one that we had in Kansas, it was actually divided into 4 different links, 4 different contractors. And they're basically under the gun to perform at speed. They get paid by days to completion. So you've got a scenario that things happen quickly and they don't happen under the watchful eye of very many regulators. The other side of this is who regulates the water? Because I go back to what you said, the water is the big thing, and that's what became my main concern, because it was going into the water table where I farmed. I depended on it for my household, my livestock. Basically, that was a big part of why I could survive on this farm. The Corps of Engineers, the Army Corps of Engineers, essentially have the they're in charge of the common, which is the water. But they don't have anything to do with the banks. That's basically owned by, the private landowner or the DNR or whoever's in charge. And so you get a real mix of how do you approach and cross a stream. That was one of my big issues. And it, particularly as Bruce's film brought out, in Wisconsin, with the water resource you have, this pipeline crossed 260 perennial streams and water courses. Well, how did they do it? And what precautions did they take? And then you get into the fact that these, the water tables are fairly low, fairly high in Wisconsin, not too far below the surface. The one I had in Kansas was 15 foot, the static level of my well. Well, this was going into depths of 25 feet, where the pipe was actually laid into the alluvial water table. So you've got a real scenario here that the slightest leak, you're going to have a real big problem that's going to affect a lot broader area than just, say, the landowner that it happened to go through. It could get into a water table, and then, of course, when Bruce mentioned the benzene and those volatile chemicals. And another thing that we didn't even talk about, in the 4 pipelines that come down, and I believe it's the pipeline 13 that runs, and it was a newly constructed one with the 61. It is a diluent pipeline that goes the opposite direction back to Canada. So basically what you do is you bring the tar sands down. It's a soup of chemicals with the heavy peanut butter consistency stuff. It gets to the refining point. They remove the diluent, put it back in a pipeline, and they have to send it back as a recycled. That's going through under the ground, and it sort of makes you wonder what if that is ever let loose, because these are volatile chemicals that, they are the ones that cause the health problems to the people along the Kalamazoo River, and they volatilize and then release into the air. So the other night when we were in Jefferson and the Enbridge people were there, that was sort of a no discussion point. So anyway, I'm going to stop, be available for any questions or anything. I did have a lot of interaction with an individual named Harold Winnie. Harold Winnie is sort of the PHMSA spokesperson that is up in Wisconsin quite often. And he's an approachable guy, and I would suggest at some point he needs to come into a meeting like this and answer questions, because there's a lot of questions in regard to the welds and the diligence that they use when they look at these pipelines when they're constructed. And then the real thing is post-construction, what are they doing to ensure that these things are properly maintained and run? So I'll let it go at that.
Mary Beth Elliott, and I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm a member of 350.org. And like many people here and many people in 350 and in the Sierra Club, I oppose the actions of Enbridge to expand their pipeline system. Now, I'm going to speak on a couple of things that you're going to say, why is this woman talking about those other things? But I'm going to make a point here, and it's going to be about risk and benefit. For many years, I worked in a clinic where it was my privilege to serve older people. People actually even a lot older than me who had bad osteoporosis. And I was one of the people that helped make decisions about what medicines they should get. Some of these are monoclonal antibodies, some of them are peptides, they're newer, they're expensive, they have risks and benefits. And I had people in the clinic who'd gone through World War II, people who'd gone through the Depression, who'd gone through a lot, who'd been brave. And they would say, Mary Beth, tell me, should I take this? I mean, I don't want to, it's dangerous. And I always go, it's risks and benefits. I don't want you to break a hip. Here's the risk. And for some of it, it was like, the risk is like getting struck by lightning. Well, one of the patients actually had been struck by lightning, so that wasn't a good, I hadn't said that to him, but anyway. So, but it's risks and benefits, and most people would realize, okay, I don't want to break a hip. That's great, that's risk and benefit. The other risk-benefit thing is about my daughter. She's an obstetrician, and she takes care of pregnant ladies all the time. And the last thing an obstetrician wants is to hear that, oh no, you've been taking this and this and this medicine, and oh my gosh. Well, in fact, we have an FDA, say what you will about it, but it goes to lab testing, animal testing, people testing, bigger trials to finally decide the risk and benefit is okay for this drug. Okay, now let's come to Enbridge. I've worked with benzene. I'm a PhD trained scientist, research scientist, and I've actually worked with benzene in the lab very, very carefully. It's a carcinogen. It's a bad thing. Now, I don't think that Enbridge has gotten anybody's permission to possibly flood our environment with this nasty stuff. Talk about risk and benefit. Where's the benefit? There are no tax benefits to where the pipeline is going through. Maybe there are a few jobs somewhere, but at the risk of our farms, our environment, our children, our pregnant ladies. Huge risk to people, huge risk to the environment and farmland and the things we treasure. And I keep on just wondering, just like when I was doing my job, now what's the benefit again for that? So that's all I want to say. Thank you for your attention.
Our last formal speaker was my initial contact to put this together. Lynn Shoemaker is from UW Whitewater. He helped get the other speakers. So Lynn, if you'd come on up and bring it on home.
Well, my thanks to everyone too, near and far. First off, this is a little bit of housekeeping to help set up any kind of walk we do or anything that we plan to do in the future. We'd like to have a list, so I'm going to send around this clipboard, and you can put your name and email and phone if you want to do that. You know what I'm saying? Don't say that you have to. But certainly there are things that we can do. We know that Charlene has introduced this resolution. We've got to find ways of giving her and that resolution support. You know, we don't want to just leave that resolution in committee with nobody talking about it, you know. Or, I guess it's out of committee, isn't it?
It passed the committee.
Yeah, so when it's before the board, we should have people there talking and supporting that, and then there are probably other things that we will do and learn about. That's another thing. We don't know all the things that we can do now. We just don't know. And the more people we have involved, the more ideas about things that we can do will come out. So I'm going to pass this around. You're handy here. You get to be first. Actually, I don't have much to say because Mary Beth talked a lot about some of the things that I'm going to talk about. And another thing I was told is you're not as old as you think you are. I thought I'd get out here and say, well, I sort of represent older people. Because a long time ago, I guess I was a little bit of an athlete, I could run real fast. I can't run fast now. If there's an accident and something is coming at me, I'm not sure I could get away from it. Another thing, and Mary Beth really got into that a little bit, and that is, if this benzene and other things, actually I inhale that, you know, I really have been exposed to it, I don't have very much of a resistance cushion. So that, you know, when I was young, maybe I could go, yeah, and my body will expel it and I'll get fine. You know, I'll be okay.
that may not be true now. You know, at 75, I don't know how much I can recover from this kind of stuff. That means we've really got to take some precautions, and this hasn't come up yet, and that is this knowledge about what's in the pipeline. I always believe, and this comes from my past, because my grandpa had a small business, and he was concerned about safety. And I always believe that safety should be the first thing. You know, the people around, the ones who work for you, the ones that are around. So this knowledge about what's in those pipelines should be known. Well, who should be known by? It should be known by the firemen that might go out there, by the sheriff and his deputies that might go out there, by the ambulance people that might go out there. If somebody's hurt, they will go out there, right? And in the hospital, knowing what those chemicals are might mean the difference between somebody dying and not dying. So doctors and nurses need to know. That should be one of the stipulations of a pipeline like this. You can't run this unless it can be done safely. So I would say one of the things we try to do is to make sure that this knowledge is out there. And if Enbridge is so darn scared about, you know, somebody's going to get this knowledge and do whatever, you know, you can say, well, there's going to be a regulation or a law where every pipeline company has to divulge this knowledge. So for the sake of people like pregnant women, young kids, older people, everybody else too, we've got to have full transparency for this thing. And Enbridge so far hasn't done very well on that. So I'll stop there, and then we can get into discussion.